Women have a fourth brain. Do you know what it is?
No.
What's that? No, you literally have a fourth organ full of neurons. The uterus. The uterus is full of neurons as well, which is technically means that women have four brains, which is why they're smarter than men, which is why they should stop giving us a hard time. Just stop giving us a hard time. You've got four brains, we've got three. You shouldn't expect as much out of us. Stop giving us a hard time.
We also have more personal vision. You guys are.
You're on even playing level. Once you've had a hysterectomy, you're down to our level.
That's why she's straight to the point. Go.
When you have a gut feeling about something, anybody ever had a gut feeling about something? You know it in your gut. Somebody can lie to you. They can talk fast. But you know in your gut. Ever know something in your heart? You know it in your heart. We have it in our vernacular. We make our life decisions based on that read we get of reality through our antenna system. When you have a heart feeling about something, when you know something's true in your heart, the logic and everything else doesn't really matter anymore because you know something. Those knowings are what guide our life decisions. We act on this throughout our life, and we don't talk about it. We don't talk about it, right? When you've got a gut feeling about something, I want to do this. I don't know why, I just know. Like, we are hardwired with the antenna to perceive reality, to communicate with reality, to engage reality. As I understand it, this is our antenna system. Plants have their antenna system. Insects have their antenna systems. We have evolved to communicate through frequency, and if we could get out of our own way to listen, some of us are better at it than others, it would be much, much more simple, everything we're up to. Anyway.
What about the TBI and
TBI.
traumatic brain injury?
Yeah.
And how that may affect your memory. So
Yeah.
there's some sort of connection with your brain and memory, though.
Absolutely, there's connection. I don't know. I mean, I haven't
If
read
it's
this
the
book
antenna,
recently.
you wreck the
You
antenna.
have a loose antenna.
You have, yeah.
Think
You
about
gotta
it. If someone comes
screw
and
it
beats your
back in.
antenna with a bat, it's not going to work.
I don't know. I haven't looked into this in depth. This is the argument that's made, and what I've been trying to piece together is some basic research which looks at this stuff from a scientific mode, which ties together an alternate reality, which correlates with what traditional human cultures across time and space have all been telling us. Again, I go back to this point about the anthropologists. When you've got 14 data points in the same spot and one over here, maybe those 14 are onto something. And if we look in the Western scientific literature, we can find explanations that justify where they're coming from. We can use our model of understanding to trust or tune into or feel or accept that which is being taught to us, which we are not open to because that's not what we've been told. And that we start off with what we've been told, and then that's our foundational assumptions. So let's use the Western scientific system to investigate this question, is my suggestion. And where's the argument there? Anyway, it's very intriguing. I find it very compelling, and I just like to put it out there for people who are curious. Ulrich, I talked about Ulrich's work with the DNA and the Human Genome Project. Wilhelm Reich, I'm officially out of time. I have about 6 or 8 more slides. I'll try to be fast, but those who have to leave, have to leave. Wilhelm Reich was a student of Freud's. He and Jung were two of Freud's sort of protege students. Wilhelm Reich, my wife learned about in 9th grade science class because she grew up in India, and Wilhelm Reich was the first Western scientist to formally isolate and prove the existence of what they call in India prana, what they call in China chi. He called it orgone or bions. Very, very interesting fellow. He was locked up by the FDA. His books were burned. He died in jail in suspicious circumstances. There's an annual meeting of the International Society of Orgonomy in Rangeley, Maine, where he lived. I had the experience of perceiving directly, which I think fits the description of what he called bions, which fits the description of what the yogis call prana. I haven't studied the Chinese literature very well, but it might fit the description of what they call qi. I wanted to sort of give you a couple descriptions here and see if anybody knows what I'm talking about. For starters, before we get to prana, has anybody ever been in the middle of a field and looked at the tree line and seen above the green of the trees and below the blue of the sky, a little white line. It's about an inch tall, looks like. No. Try it sometime. Growing up on the farm, I spent a lot of time outside, wishing I wasn't in the middle of the field working. But I remember always seeing above the green of the trees and below the blue of the sky this white line. Not a line, it's like a thick white space. And I'm just like, it's always there, I can't get it out, what is it? And it fits the description of a aura, I believe.
I always thought it was the moisture or something from the trees. 'Cause I
But it's
see-
always there.
Yeah.
What is this white thing above the trees that's I can't get out of my eyes? It fits the description of an aura exactly,
The camera doesn't pick it
just as a coincidence. Anyways, you guys don't get much snow down here. My experience on a sunny morning after it snowed, going outside into the bright light of the sun, is that I look at the snow, I see these little things spiraling around they're translucent. They're not there, but I can see like the edges of them spiraling. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? These little things you see spiraling? Sometimes in the,
up. I thought it was my room.
yeah, you think it's your eyes, but you see it. In the late afternoon, if you're, out in the backyard and, the trees are a ways away and you're focusing your eyes like 15 feet away into the sky, like focus like you were looking 15 feet away, but there's nothing there, just sky. I see these same things spiraling around in the sky. You don't see it in the city. You see it up in the mountains. You see it in places where you can smell fresh air. These little things that spiral around, they do this spiraling motion. I see them when I'm riding in an airplane. I look out the window of the airplane. They're always outside the window of the airplane. I don't know what it is, except it fits the description of prana and orgone and chi, according to Wilhelm Reich. I want to put it out there. Take it for what it's worth.
I asked someone about that, and they told me that was little particles on my eyeballs.
Yeah, that all spiral really fast in the same direction.
Yeah,
Just a coincidence.
that's what it was.
Read Wilhelm Reich's work. Interesting. Very, very interesting.
Well, there is a Taoist term for that, it's called Shih, S-H-I-H,
Yeah?
which is propensity energy, in the system.
Yeah. I mean, I would argue that our body is the tool by which we can perceive the multiple octaves of reality. That we have the meridians, we have the nadis, we have the chakras, we have actually cultures which are much older than ours, which are very scientific in their orientation, which have laid out a subtle anatomy and structure and said, look guys, this is how it works. Cause and effect, do this, get this result. Do this, get this result. It's scientific, it's just metaphysics, not just plain physics, right? Our science is physics, is the physical plane. There's a metaphysics of the other octaves. And the argument is, this is why I'm talking about Jesus saying the body is a temple, is that our tool for perceiving that reality is this body, which we inhabit. We are not the body, we are that which inhabits the body. And the body is our tool for perceiving that reality and engaging in that reality. This is my larger argument. I hope I'm not coming across too strongly. I apologize if I am. Rudolf Steiner, the founder of biodynamics, as well as a couple of other interesting schools of thought, actually himself did have a background in the esoteric. He was brought up in the Theosophical tradition, which is one of the Western mystery schools. Very powerful in his day in the late 1800s. Theosophists were competing with the chemists in England to identify the structure of matter. People don't know this story, but you can look it up in the newspapers in London in the late 1800s. The Theosophists were sitting down and meditating and looking at copper and seeing the structure of copper and then drawing it up and publishing it. And then a month later or a year later, the chemists would identify the structure of copper and publish it. And lo and behold, the Theosophists beat the chemists on 35 elements or something. I'm not sure the exact number, but dozens of elements. The Theosophists figured out their structure first before the chemists and published it in the newspapers. Steiner grew up in this community. Now Blavatsky and what's her name, Besant. At any rate, Steiner is one who I've not studied sufficiently well to speak really coherently about him. There are some people in the biodynamic community who follow closely the moon signs and talk about the effect of subtle forces in the environment. Again, we talk to indigenous communities around the planet, and they're very categorical about when you should plant and when you should harvest and when you should do other things based on where the moon is. And it's, and Functionally, there was a woman named, what's her name? In Germany,
The one who does the calendar.
radishes,
the-
Maria Thun. Yeah,
Yeah.
Maria Thun, who did research planting 30 radish seeds every day and watching to see how they grew. I'm not sure anybody's ever, again, as growing up on a farm, my experience was sometimes we'd plant radishes and they'd all go to seed. And sometimes we'd plant radishes and they'd all grow big leaves. And every now and then we'd plant radishes and they'd actually grow big roots. Anybody had this experience? Every now and then?
I grow radishes, what's the difference?
Sometimes they grow roots.
I'm not watching the moon, is that it?
The whole point is
I gotta have to start doing that.
that when the moon is sometimes in front of a constellation which projects it, the moon functions according to this whole, paradigm. The moon functions like a magnifying glass, and it magnifies different energies as it passes through around. So what we call an Earth sign, what's an Earth sign? Taurus? Is Taurus an Earth sign? When the moon is in front of Taurus, it's magnifying the Earth sign energy, and that's when you plant your root crops because the root aspect is accentuated. When the moon is in front of what we call a water sign, that's when the leaf growth is accentuated. When the moon is in front of what we call a fire sign, is when the fruit growth is accentuated. And this is what Maria Thun documented on her farm, and there's a whole calendar which lays this all out for you. Very, very interesting.
What about air?
Air is seed, is herbs, flowers and herbs, and seed. Yeah.
So you plant things that you want to go to seed?
When you are planting things that you want to have strong aromatic qualities, or flowers, or seed crops, you plant them on an air sign. Aries is a fire sign. There's a really simple calendar you can buy for $13. I buy the one that comes out of Pennsylvania called the Stella Natura.
There's also a website.
And you can look this all up online. It interestingly happens to coordinate with what communities of people from around the planet without talking to each other have all come to. Just saying, if we're scientists and we're looking at data points, there's certain things that cultures pay a lot of attention to and feel strongly about who never talk to each other. And this is one more of those things that we as good Western rational skeptics are like,
Right.
baloney. And yet, if we want to be honest, we want to be scientists, we want to be Western rational thinkers, if we want to, engage in science properly and not be dogmatic, we need to look at the data and think logically about it. If we want to engage it that way, we could say intuitively, boy, that makes sense, I'm going to go for it, I don't care, which is what some of us do. But I can engage the Western rational mode if I so choose. Anyway, minor point on this, not minor. One of Steiner's students named, what's that? Aaron Reed Pfeiffer, thank you. Yes, Pfeiffer was one of the people who brought biodynamics to North America. I guess a picture of him holding you as a baby. Is that the story I heard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second
It's a
generation
story I
thing,
heard,
third
yes.
generation.
Just confirming. Pfeiffer asked Steiner, why is it that when we sit down to meditate, sit down to pray, I talked about this yesterday, didn't I? Why can't we maintain that state of consciousness when we get up to go about our life? And Steiner said, because our food does not have enough soul force. Our food does not have enough soul force. So this goes back to my argument a minute ago with consciousness and our ability to hold higher consciousness and the nature of our food and the quality of our food. I truly do believe that there's something here. I'm not saying I know what it is, but I think there's something here. Mollison and Holmgren and permaculture, I think I've respected permaculture sufficiently. It deserves great respect. The insight about polycultures and about the full spectrum of species present, the perennial aspects, the microbiology, the minimal tillage, the importance of water. There's so much that permaculture has to offer and integrate into our understandings about how to work well with the land. I think truly the best permaculturalists were those indigenous cultures which were managing the whole landscape as the Native Americans were and as others were historically as well. But we've got a system now from white people that comes in books which trains you, for those who are curious, called permaculture, which really operates from a lot of these deeper insights. I don't have time to go into it in depth. Kerry Reams, again, unfortunately don't have time to go into depth on him. He, I believe, also was a clairvoyant and perceived things directly. He was I talked about memes yesterday. I don't think I need to talk about them too much more. I'll just say one thing here. If your plants are not flowering and fruiting, little trick, if they're like eggplants are not flowering and fruiting, they're just growing but not flowering, you can apply what Reeves would have called female elements. I've got written down here phosphorus and manganese. I believe those are what he called the most strongly female elements. And you should expect to see a female reproductive response, which is the flowering of the crop. If you have lettuce that you are afraid is going to go to seed, which would be a female response, and you want to have a strongly male energy effect, put the male finger on the scale. That would be calcium and potassium. So you can apply calcium and potassium to keep things from going to seed. You can apply phosphorus and manganese to force things to go to seed. Not that you should, but once you understand the spin and the energy of these different elements, you can use them as necessary to modulate reality around you. Quickly, again, anybody who's aware of the concept that when you spend too much time talking on your cell phone, it hurts your brain. You shouldn't be in the presence of Wi-Fi. Sitting in front of a photocopier or a microwave is bad for you. It's aware of this concept called EMF, electromagnetic frequencies, distant electromagnetic frequencies. As I understand it, remember in the 90s, the ad, this is your brain on drugs, with a frying pan with a raw egg in it and a fried egg. My understanding is this is your brain on EMFs, that actually electromagnetic frequencies, these things, cell phones, wireless, computer wireless, et cetera, fry the protoplasm in our cells like an egg, literally fry it. That's why your brain hurts if you spend too much, the side of your head, anybody? Right in here? I feel it and it hurts.
Yeah, I have to unplug.
My children won't sleep if we don't unplug
They're
the
about 100
wireless.
times what they were 125 years ago.
It's real
And now
bad.
they're about, before cell phones, and now they're probably about 1,000 times what we evolved with.
I
prior to
can't
all this.
I can't sleep in the city. I go to the city to speak and I open up my computer and there's like 85 wireless signals all overlapping. Right? You wonder why people in the city can't sleep? You wonder why they're all like
Jacked up. All the
wired?
artificial light, all the fluorescent light.
they can't hold a coherent thought, right? Anybody? City people? Sorry, city people here? Probably not the city people here because you guys are all holding coherent thoughts. No, seriously, like you try to go have an intelligent conversation and this is anyways. My understanding is that we are, as antennas, and our plants as antennas, are being affected by this background dissonant frequency, and it's really messing us up. The idea here is that, yes, this is part of reality, and if we can project dissonance, then we should be able to project coherence, right? A corollary is if we can, we can project dissonance, we can project coherence. And so I've got written down here the term cosmic pipes. I've got three names, Galen Hieronymus, Hugh Lovell, Bruce Tainio, people who have designed tools that can be used, plugged into the ground, plugged into your electric socket in your house that can project coherence into an area. Very, very interesting topic. I don't have enough confidence to say this works this way, this works that way, this one's a good deal, that one's a scam. But the idea here is that if we can project dissonance, we can project coherence. If we are antenna, if life is antenna, if life is projecting through frequency, then this that's going on is actually dramatically affecting us and life around us. And we should take responsibility at least for our energetic space and work to project coherence in it. Yes?
We go in a cave, we feel completely different.
Yep. How well does your cell phone work in the cave?
And if there's no cell phones in there,
We sense these things. When the power goes out,
In the absence of, yep.
anybody
That's what
ever
a lot of
been around the
residents
house when the power's out? Like, what's your quality of sleep like?
you can take a fluorescent light bulb and walk it under some of these high power lines and
And
it'll
it lights right
illuminate.
up. I did that in like a 4th grade science experiment. Yeah. Take a fluorescent light bulb and walk underneath the power lines.
We live near one of these power lines in New Hampshire, and we could walk under this thing and our bodies would feel different.
When it rains, you can hear it.
Yeah.
There were times when our hair in the cold winter our hair going under these power lines would begin to stand up.
Yeah. So, laying it out there, we're past time. I don't really have anything else to say, except this is part of reality as I understand it. I think it's part of the larger conversation. Water, Masaru Emoto, Messages from Water. Brilliant book if you've read the book. Brilliant movie if you've seen the movie. This guy was a Japanese researcher who would take tap water, put it into vials, say to one vial, I love you, and say to the other vial, I hate you, and put those two vials in the freezer. And then when they froze, he'd take them out and take a picture of the crystalline structure and see beautiful snowflake shapes over here and totally amorphous blobs over here.
Did different languages.
Absolutely, totally interesting. Then didn't say anything, just wrote it on a piece of tape and put it on there. Really interesting. We talked about water yesterday. I said I don't know what water is. I think it's really, really interesting. We talked about irrigation lines. We talked about the heart and spin. I don't really have a lot more to say about water, except that it's really, really interesting, and not all water is equal. And you know, if we can figure out ways to work intelligently and thoughtfully to put structure and coherence into our irrigation water, I bet it'll help our plants. So I'll leave that there, because I really don't have a lot to offer, except that it's really interesting. The last two slides I've got here are seawater and rock dust. I want to just reiterate what I said earlier, which is that I think that we can do an amazing amount with things we have in our immediate environment to revitalize the land. And if we want to work most efficiently, helping to address mineral deficiencies, I think is strategic. And in some cases, we can't get those minerals immediately or readily from our immediate environment. But I think with rock dust and seawater, we have everything that we need to remineralize this planet. I truly do believe that we can turn this planet from brown to green. I truly do believe that we can build soil and create the foundational environment for humanity writ large to have a much more harmonious existence. And that's my desire, my intention, and you know, my hope with this work, with this organization and around this country. So I wish you all luck in the process of, you know, building soil and growing healthy plants. And if it's true, it'll work. And if it works, I hope it'll spread. So I think that's about all I have.